everyone, and welcome to Pace Yourself. Today we're going to be talking about what an MCP server is in the language of a Salesforce admin. We're also going to build an MCP server for Claude, so stick around and let's dive into it. So what is actually an MCP? Let's talk about what it can see in Salesforce when it's connected, but ultimately it's a tool to connect your Salesforce and an AI assistant. What do I mean by that? It really is holding three things. It can only see a short list of tools that you tell it. So just like how we make permission sets and profiles, it works behind the scenes. So it's not like a screen flow. It's not something that you put in front of their face. It's actually a layer behind that. It only knows exactly what the tools that you create, telling it back. So think of it, I've got an analogy here. It's like a vending machine. You put in only a specific number and it only goes to that specific rack. It doesn't go looking from the top to the bottom to find what you said. It knows exactly where it's going. So think of it like a whole kitchen versus a menu. So your whole kitchen is your org. Everything's inside. Everything can happen inside. All your system permissions can be granted, or your field permissions, object permissions can be granted. But the MCP tool can't see that. It only sees the menu of things you let it do. So here on the right-hand side, you can see we're saying you can only look up contacts or open new cases. So create case. You can only update a contact and log a call. Those granular tools are what make this MCP shine. So here we're talking about what do you see after you ask the question. So if you ask the question, what tier is Acme? It then goes into its tool bank and find which one it needs. It then goes and gets just that one account because it's been told which account. It doesn't go and look through all your accounts to find the match. It's being given it because the tools in the Salesforce tool bank are enabling it to. So we know what it mostly does. So it talks from your AI assistant to your Salesforce using only the tools that you're allowing it to use. It's not going to go fish in your account or your org. It's only going to do the things you specify it can do based on the permissions and profiles of the logged in user. What it is not, it's not another team app that you download or you create, or it's not another page layout that you have to maintain. It doesn't by default access all your data. You're not opening it up to the world. Your AI only acts when it is triggered, only through the aspects of the tools that you create. Again, you're not handing someone the keys. You're not handing an org or an AI agent the keys to your org. You're giving it only specific access. So here is an example of what you can ask and what you get back. So here we've said open a case for Acme and tell me what tier they are. So it goes into its menu from its tool bank and says, what can I do to satisfy this ask? So look up an account, I can do that, and I can open a new case. So it uses those specific things to do only those two things. It doesn't go beyond that unless your org has automation. That's another story. But if you ask for something off the menu of tools that you've created, like deleting the record, it simply just cannot do it and comes back and says, I do not have the capabilities of doing that. It also can show you visualizations. So AI assistants like Claude and ChatGPT can bring back data and show it to you in a new visualization that would be better or even just different, fresh for the user compared to reports and dashboards. It can also do analysis of that data. So here we've said, how is this quarter's pipeline looking? It doesn't go and create a report in Salesforce and bring back the link for you. It goes and collects that pipeline for the quarter and brings it back as data, does the analysis for you, and then you can use that to show you a graph. So keep in mind, when you have these AI assistants connected, it hasn't seen the context of your entire org. So it is only looking through a teeny tiny hole using the tools that you've given it to do. It doesn't know the why, and it doesn't know the context behind a lot of your data. We'll get into how you can improve that in the next video. So let's look at how we can build this safely and dive into creating our first MCP. Okay, so we're here in our dashboard from our home setup screen, and we're going to go into our hosted MCP servers to create our new connection. In the quick find box, we're going to type in MCP, and you'll notice to stop here, you actually want the one under the API catalog. Click the bottom one. Okay, we're confronted with our first screen, Salesforce servers, external servers, and add new MCP servers or import external servers. What we're going to do today is just turn on the Salesforce ones that come out of the box and connect it to Claude as our basic first step. Now we're going to do your safest step first. And if you wanted to play around with access to your org or get some of your super users on board, we're going to go to this S-objects-reads Salesforce server, and in your top right, you're going to activate. Great. So we've activated that one. Heading back to our MCP servers, just to make sure. Excellent. So you can see on the bottom, we've got that particular S-object-reads. So this is giving read access to our objects in Salesforce based on the logged in users, permission sets, and profiles. Okay, the next step, we'll have to register our external client app so that Claude can see the Salesforce hosted MCP server. So it ultimately tells which client can start an OAuth, which is an authentication between Salesforce and Claude. We have to create that external app for it so that we can give the users permission to use it, and we can tell it that this is the one we want. So in the quick find box, I'm going to type in external client. Now we're going to click into external client manager. Now we're going to create external client app. So a new one on the top right hand side. And we're just going to give it an information generalized. So we're going to say read. We can put in our email. And the next thing we're going to do is expand our API auth settings. Click enable. So for the callback, we're going to use Claude's callback URL. These links can be copy and pasted from the YouTube videos description. So from the OAuth scopes left-hand multi-select pick list, we're going to move 2 across to the right-hand side. So it is going to be the one said perform requests at any time and access Salesforce hosted MCP. Access Salesforce hosted MCP servers. Going down the page under security, we're going to uncheck require web server flow, and we're going to uncheck refresh token flow. Under security, we are going to make sure to check require proof key and issue JSON web token. So it should look like that. And we're going to go and hit create. Excellent. So it will refresh and you'll see now your created external client app. Under the settings, we're going to scroll down to our auth settings and we're going to click consumer key and secrets. Now this is where your dev org has to be one that you can actually get the verification code to, so you can access this section. So I've gone to my email and got my code, pasted it in here, and we amazingly see Salesforce Classic. So that's exciting for us. These are our consumer keys. Make sure you keep these safe. We're going to use these in a second to connect to our Claude account. Okay, next step is our Claude step. So Claude doesn't connect directly to Salesforce, as we've just discussed. It uses this hosted MCP server through a connector you create in Claude to get all the information that you're talking about. So we need to, when Claude asks for records, Salesforce checks the user's permission sets, the field level security, sharing rules, what's allowed in the tools that you've just added, and the Claude only receives the data that logged in users can access. then uses that data to ground the answer that it provides back to you. So let's open up Claude. So now we've opened up Claude, let's create our connector. In the bottom left-hand corner, click on your name. We're going to go to Settings. On the left-hand bottom side, we're going to go to Connectors. And in Connectors, we're going to go Add a custom connector. This one has to have a meaningful name. So if you're connecting multiple Salesforce orgs, make sure you just don't call them all Salesforce, because then that's confusing. You'll often see as well, if you're going to connect like a UAT environment or a dev environment, anyone connected to your Claude account, if you don't have enterprise and you just have team, they can all see the connectors added. Doesn't mean they can connect to them through Salesforce, but they can see them all. So make sure you give them good naming conventions like dev org Mia. Don't use the word Salesforce, because then that might confuse your users into thinking that's the one they need to connect to when you ask them to connect. I would recommend highly using the word Salesforce for only the one that users can and should be using to connect to Salesforce. So using that, I'm going to be actually calling this one Pace Yourself org. So this next one, remote MCP server URL. This one is where Claude is pointing its URL to, as if it was a user, genuinely a HTML page. Which one are we going to send it to? It is an API endpoint, and if you're using a dev edition, it's just normal, and you would use the same for your main org. If you're using a sandbox or scratch org, you have to use the word sandbox instead of platform. I'll post these in the show notes as well. So I'm going to copy the top one because I'm in a dev org and I've got the S object reads at the end, which remember was the tool that we turned on, or the server we turned on, I'm sorry. So we're going to copy that one, head back into Claude and paste that one here. So each connector connects to one server. So if you have a need to have read, edit, create, lots of other fancy features, I would create your own MCP server and put the tools inside that you're asking for. But this example is just S-objects read, so read all the objects in Salesforce that the logged in user can see. So now it's asking for our client ID and secret. Let's go back to my secret page that I've left open. So client ID is your consumer key and secret is secret. And we're going to click Add. So now it's actually recognizing that it's going to a URL and says you're not connected to your org yet, so hit connect. So make sure you can log in with your Claude account here so you can connect it to that server. So I verified with the email. I'm going to copy this code, head back to my Pace Yourself org and verify my email for my Claude account. Now it's triggering that login process. We click allow and it is now connected through to our Claude code. So you can see our connector is now sitting here. You can give it read only and ask all the time for permission to do the related things like search for objects. And so these are all the tools listed behind that server inside Salesforce. So this is our menu of things that it can choose from when you're asking it a question. You can actually default to always allow, depending on what your org and your business requires. So let's go and test what this actually looks like. So I've got your Pace Yourself org there. You can see it's the Salesforce icon. So even if you do type in a nice description for your dev org, it still can link to Salesforce, but it's just not confusing your users by being called Salesforce very appropriately. So let's give it a query and see how it works. If I click this plus icon here and I hover over connectors, I can see that it is connected for this chat. This is helpful if you have multiple orgs connected to your chats. So you're testing a particular server in UAT or your dev environment. You can toggle it off and you can toggle it on as much as you need. So I'd turn off production, for instance, if I'm testing the connector through to my dev org while I'm updating new tools. But let's get to our chat. Okay, let's go and click go. See what it does. And here it's come back and it is giving me exactly what I've asked for. I didn't give it any other examples. I've just asked for accounts and I told it what particular fields I want to show, and it's created a nice little table for me. You can see inside its decision-making process that it found the tools that you told it were available. So in your dev org, it then used a query, SQL query, and then returns those accounts it found and puts it in a nice visualization for you. Now you can interrogate it further and you can say things like, show it to me in a graph by industry and revenue. And it comes back with a nice graphical representation. I didn't have to go create a dashboard and a chart and a report, and I can actually take this out as well by hitting the 3 dots on the top right, copying it to a clipboard, or even just downloading it. So it's super easy and very useful for your Salesforce users, even if you just want to start them off with this read access. So let me go through a bit of troubleshooting with your connector, because sometimes you will find there are issues. The first issue that most people will run into is actually permission to even use the connector. So there is a system-wide permission that a user will need to actually open a connector. And to make sure that the permissions are given to your users, we're just going to go and create a permission set with the minimum it needs to access this external client app. Now, if you're keeping a track of all your permissions and who has what, this should be something you have to do. So here I'm going to say MCP Server to Claude. Obviously give it a very nicely descriptive description because they're the best and you have to do it. But what we're going to do first is we're going to give it a system permission called API enabled. This is technically the only permission you need to give someone for them to be able to use the connector. So this permission set now gives me the ability to give it to someone. So I'm going to go to my user, give myself the one we just created, MCP Server to Claude, just click save. So because this account is system admin, it already had that one. But if you don't have system admin, this API access will be needed for your users. Let's go back to our external client app though. So we're going to come back into our manage external client app. Under policies, in app policies and auth policies, the first thing we're going to do is change this permitted users to admin approved users are pre-authorized. So we're making it so that we give someone permission to use it rather than the user gives themselves permission to use it. And then you get to see profiles and permission sets. So here, this is how you actually restrict some users from using your MCP server and some people not using your MCP server. Click save. And now those particular users can use Claude because they've got that API access permission enabled, and you're good to go. So thank you for tuning in to Pace Yourself. I'm Mia Pacey, and I'll see you on the next one.